These videos only happen because of the support and help from our sponsors. Support the companies that support us. Welcome to another episode of Dream Rides here with the Bike Specialists. And of course, my good friend James. This time, it's a bit of an understated one, isn't it? It's the Honda SP1.
SP1, that's right, yeah. Can you believe that bike is 20 years old? In fact, sorry, 23 years old. And look at it, it just looks absolutely stunning. It still looks modern now.
Yeah, mine, we're going to say, there's going to be a few Honda cliches in this, but typical bloomin' Honda.
Yeah, exactly.
It still looks absolutely pristine. It's still, everything feels crisp and new when you're moving it around in the showroom here.
It's Honda quality.
It's a Honda.
And it's just every time they just pull it out of the bag.
It's boring, that cliche, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's a cliche for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, if you put a new Honda Fireblade, you know, the latest 23 model, next to this bike now, it looked like a 600 compared to this.
It would. And it's an interesting one, the SP1. Like, I mean, a lot of people might be thinking, really, dream ride? For me, it was a dream ride because when I was 16 years old, I just got my moped, a Gilera DNA 50 in red.
Nice.
And my uncle had the very last of the SP1s from Doble's Honda in Coulsdon.
Oh, right.
And it was actually painted white with Castrol stickers. And he used to come out and ride with me at 30 mile an hour. I can't imagine how agonizing that was for him on an SP1. But you know, it was such a special bike when it came out. It was one of the first special Hondas I remember seeing in a showroom. And that is exactly what it was. It was a Honda race homologation bike. That was why they built it.
Yeah. They did such a good job of it. Ducati was literally winning the championship with the 996, with the L twin, and Honda's RC45 was getting a little bit long in the tooth. They brought the RC45 out in '94, so they had 6 years on the RC45, and it was a very successful bike. But Honda needed to think out of the box, and they just got in their heads. It was down to the Ducati running the L twin, because obviously you could run 1000cc on a twin. And Honda came up with, they thought they'd teach Ducati a lesson, and they did exactly that with the SP1 1000cc Honda. And yeah, it was a bit of like, we'll teach you Ducati. Yeah,
and even more than that, because not only did they jump to a V-twin, so they didn't have to be 750cc, they could be 1000cc, so they went straight in to beat Ducati at their own game.
That's right.
Won 2 World Superbike titles, and then put all their toys back in the lorry and drove back home to Japan and went, oh, we're not doing Superbikes anymore, we won.
That's right. They did the 996 as well. The double slap for Ducati was the 996 Ducati was £10,000 brand new. And they put these in the showroom at 9,000, so it's £1,000 saving as well. So yeah, they really did told Ducati a lesson.
It's nice to know these big faceless manufacturers are actually just kids fighting in a playground.
Correct.
Sometimes. It's always a bike that for me has always been special because my uncle had one, but they're very overlooked. And part of me always wonders, because they had the Firestorm out, which was a sports road bike.
That's right.
It was a nice bike, it was a great bike, but it wasn't like an epic homologation special.
Correct.
This bike did borrow quite heavily from the Firestorm. It was based around the Firestorm, allegedly. And I wonder if that sort of took some of the shine off initially, that people were like, oh, I'm just getting a Firestorm with a fairing.
That's right.
And maybe that's why they didn't get such a popular following straight away. But now, I mean, people are starting to realise
they are doing, and I think it's different generations as well. I mean, the RC30 and the RC45, people, they've been super high. People have been wanting those, and I think these are the next ones, definitely. We've had a lot of interest in these when they come into the showroom, and they're at sensible money now as well, so they're quite affordable for people. But compared to the RC30s and the RC45s, but fabulous bike. A few numbers on these as well. They weigh 200 kilos, which
that's dry as well.
Yeah, it's dry, but to ride it, you wouldn't actually think that.
No, that sounds bad on paper.
Yeah, it does. But you are talking 23 years ago, and 134 brake horsepower. So they're not massive.
Doesn't sound overwhelming, does it?
No. And 168 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But
that's always good.
Yeah, but I think it was about the power delivery. It was very, very successful at the Ironman TT.
Yeah.
And I think my thinking behind it is because it's just Honda, the build quality on them is just fantastic. They can really take endurance, hence why it was so successful with Joey Dunlop and all the big names at the TT, and also Suzuka endurance racing.
Well, I have to say, I'm gagging to ride this almost as much as I was gagging to ride the 998R.
Really?
Which is obviously my personal. Yeah. But with this, I'm very prepared to be disappointed, and I'm hoping I'm not. But we'll see later on. But I know the numbers, I know the bike's reputation, and I've built it up in my head to be this incredible thing, and I'm waiting to go out and go, yep, it's fairly steady and fairly heavy.
Yeah, I know you love V-twins, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But let's see. I'll be interested to know your thoughts after.
Come on, let's go.
Let's do it.
No more talking. I want to ride it. Let's go. Bumbling through the little villages like this. The old RC51 I think, the SP2 is heavy on the wrist. The clutch is a little bit hard work. Hydraulic clutch, but it is, yeah. But fueling is smooth, gearbox is still super slick. It doesn't overheat, it doesn't cook you. It's just really nice, easy thing to ride. Genuinely brilliant bike in the lanes. People keep telling me, don't be your heroes, dreams are always better than reality, the grass is always green. I don't know where all these sayings come from, because so far every single one of these dream rides I've ridden has actually exceeded my expectations in a lot of ways. And the SP1 has probably done that more than any other bike. I actually have had more fun riding this than everything except the 998R, and mainly because the 998R had such a special place in my heart. The SP1, I think, is the most underrated dream bike we've ridden yet. And I don't think I can think of another one that represents such a good value classic bike. It is so easy to use. It just bloody well works. I hate saying the typical Honda thing, but it is just, you know, it's absolutely a typical Honda. The familiarity when you get on it and you look at the switchgear, and the switchgear is the same switchgear that is on every CBR 600 ever. The brake lever is the same. Everything looks and feels exactly like every Honda you've ever ridden, which for me was a bit disappointing because you want it to be a special homologation bike, but then you get out and ride it and you just find yourself enjoying the ride. You're not having the ride taken over by the fact that it's this ridiculous engine or this incredible carbon fiber thing around you. You're just riding something that is just genuinely a brilliant chassis and a great fun bike to ride on the road. And there aren't many classic sports bikes that you can hand on heart say that about. First thing I noticed when you jump on the SP1, obviously I've mentioned the familiarity of all the controls. It's a big bike, big bulbous tank in front of you. There are big flat sort of slabs down the side of it that your legs rest on, really flat seat, and you kind of sit. There's a lot of room to move around, but you kind of sit around this big bike. It's typical of sports bikes of the time. Late 90s, everything was a lot bigger, a lot more stance to it. Once we got into the 2000s, everything shrunk right back down again. This thing is a big slab of a bike. It is quite low on the bars. A few people have said they're comfy. James said he was surprised how comfy it is. Around town, at sort of dawdling through traffic pace, it is fairly low on the bars. It isn't the nicest city bike. You are lent on your wrists. There's no getting away from that. You are lent on the front of the bike. It's missed it. Yeah, you're definitely lent on your wrists, and it's noticeable. That said, I rode up here on the GS, so it's not a surprise that this feels a little uncomfortable. But one of the things I did find riding in the city, you're never worried. You're never looking at the temperature gauge in a panic. You're never hoping the fan's going to cut in. You're never questioning whether the lights are going to keep working and the indicators are going to work. Everything on it just worked as it did the day this thing rolled out the factory. And I don't think that's an exception. This is a Honda. Honda has built a fantastic reputation over the years for quality and reliability. And whatever your other thoughts about Hondas, they are exactly that. It is a solid, sturdy bike that you can ride day in, day out in a way very few classics, particularly V-twin classics, will allow you to. Rolling out into the nice countryside roads, the first kind of few big opens of the throttle, it isn't massive amount of power. It's not an overwhelming engine experience. Some of these dream rides we've been on, the engine has been the whole of the story. On the SP1, the engine is there. It's a very linear power delivery, it's very smooth. The SP1 was known for having not that great fueling, but for me it was only a little bit of on-off very occasionally. Most of the time the fueling was pretty good. On this one as tested, it just went. It just had a kind of really flat, really linear, predictable power. All that stuff V-twins are famous for. No real rush at the top, but plenty of rev range. You weren't crashing into the rev limiter. As you can tell, I'm talking around it. The engine's a little underwhelming if that's what you're looking for in a bike. Where the SP1 really started to make sense for me was when we got to some good roads and some nice twisty corners. And instead of then wishing for more excitement out of the engine, you're working with the engine. You're tipping the bike in. The chassis is very, very neutral. It steers brilliantly. So you're pitching it into these turns, picking up the gas, and then using that wide spread of power to drive hard out the other side. There's no sudden step, there's no sudden peak, so you're never worried about it snapping the rear end out. There's never vicious torque that you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna high side myself to the moon. It just gives you if it was a 600, it would be a CBR 600. Everyone knows what they're like to ride. They're the most easy forgiving bike on the planet. Well, apply that formula to a V-twin superbike, and that's exactly what the SP1 is like to ride. It just wants to be your friend, and it wants you to ride it as fast as you're happy to. And I think that's an absolutely great thing. The other little bit that they've done really well with this bike is being able to change down into second or first gear without the rear wheel hopping and skipping all over the road. I'm going to compare it to the Ducati here. The Ducati, you have to be very careful on the downshifts. If you snap the throttle shut, the thing already wants to back in. This, I was using first gear in places I would never dream of doing it, even on probably a modern 4-cylinder superbike. It was really forgiving to just clonk it into first, no protest, and then pick up the gas nice and smooth all the way out, and obviously not do wheelies on the public road, but sometimes the terrain meant that the front wheel came what looked like off the floor, but obviously it wasn't. I think if you're looking for a good usable classic bike, an SP1 is a very, very good shout. Or, of course, there's the SP2. Didn't get to ride that today. Not a huge difference from the SP1 in the grand scheme of things, but definitely the more refined package. Yeah, get yourself a bit of Honda racing heritage and go and have a spin on an SP1. It's a properly good bike. I shouldn't be surprised.